Hey, good morning. Thank you for those of you who are on today. This is our second in a series of trainings on the PSE strategies for year 2020. This training will be on our Create Healthy Schools strategy. And I am Casey Coombs. I'm the Assistant Director of our Create Better Health Utah SNAP-Ed program. So during today's presentation, we'll do a quick overview of Create Healthy Schools. And then we'll look at the two strategies that we have approved in our grant, the Smarter Lunchroom Movement and School Gardens. And we'll look at identifying partners within schools, how to get started on both of these types of projects, and then how to report them in pairs. So hopefully this will give you kind of all you need to know to at least feel comfortable to approach the schools and get these programs started in your counties. So the goal of our Create Healthy Schools is, as you probably could imagine, since it is a policy systems and environment intervention, is to create schools where the healthy choice is the easy and preferred choice for students. Like I mentioned, the two approved strategies within our grant are the Smarter Lunchroom Movement and then also doing school garden work. This isn't to say that you couldn't do other strategies within the school. Remember in the PSE 101 training, we talked about the PSE action plan form for strategies that are not previously approved. If you have a different idea or a different need in your school, you could fill out one of these forms and submit it to the state office to have it, which will essentially just trigger a meeting with state office members to see if it is something that we can approve for our program. And some of those strategies may be some different things working with the wellness committees within each school. Every school is required to have a wellness committee, so you could potentially become a member there and be a representative for the target population that we represent, that we work with. Or there may be some other things that, that come up in your individual schools. When we're talking about Create Healthy Schools, one thing that I want to just re-emphasize with PSE in general, but also for schools, is the multi-level interventions are the most effective. So over here on the screen, you can see a model of the comprehensive programming areas that we have in our program. So the direct education for adults and youth, social marketing, as well as the policy systems and environment and indirect activities. So when we refer to multi-level interventions, we're talking about programs that implement more than one of those program areas. So for schools, it could be that you're doing policy systems and environment work maybe in the cafeteria or with the school garden, but then you're also in that school teaching the kids in the classroom about the importance of fruits and vegetables and maybe introducing some of the new fruits and vegetables that are available from the garden in the classroom. You might also add another level of an intervention for an indirect activity where maybe you have a booth at a back to school night. So not only now are you reaching the kids in the classroom, but now you're also reaching the parents and either teaching them about the PSE work that you're doing or a specific nutrition message. Another indirect activity you can do to complement your PSE activities in schools are maybe just send home those kids create flyers, that blog that we have from the state office to help people, be directed to that source of recipes and nutrition information for kids. When we're working with schools,
no, please shower, style your hair.
Any capacity, whether it's policy systems and environment, direct, indirect, we want to make sure we're working in eligible schools. So remember, schools that are eligible for our programming are those where at least 50% of the students are eligible for free and reduced meals. You can find those schools in your eligibility folder on Box, which we can help direct you to if you have questions on how to find that. If you have a school in your area that you'd like to work in that is really close to that 50%, like 47%, 48%, there is an eligibility waiver that the administration at that school can sign stating that perhaps there are, it's reported at 48% free and reduced, but they're pretty confident that more kids are eligible for the programming. So you can find that eligibility waiver on the staff website under the miscellaneous forms. When you're doing PSE in schools, like PSE anywhere, there are some advantages and some potential barriers. So some of the advantages of working in schools for PSE is you can impact many students with a single change. So maybe you are just making fruits or vegetables more available in the cafeteria, and that one single change can impact hundreds of students. There's an opportunity, a great opportunity for a multi-level intervention. A lot of schools would probably be happy if they're open to you doing something like the Smarter Lunchroom movement in their cafeteria. Chances are you may be able to find some teachers that are also interested in having you come to the classroom to teach kids about those changes that you're making, as well as teach them other parts of our program and curriculum. And a lot of our ambassadors have really great relationships with the school. So I know starting PSE can be kind of overwhelming and daunting. So starting where you already have relationships established, whether it's in a school or a food pantry, is a great place to start. Some of the potential barriers are all schools are run differently. So, maybe you're really successful in one school and you were able to get things off the ground by just working with maybe one teacher and a food service manager, but in another school, they're going to require you to go through the principal or maybe even a higher district level management to get PSE things off the ground. So those are some barriers that are, common in any site you're doing PSE, as well as some of the advantages. So when you're talking about finding schools, your very first step is to look at eligibility, so finding schools that are eligible. And sometimes in the state office, we refer to good, better, best practices. And if you're in an area where you have a school where one school is 51% eligible or free and reduced students, that would be a good place. If you had a school that was 65% free and reduced students, that would be a better place. And if you have a school that's maybe 70% free and reduced students, that would be the best place. So when you're kind of looking at your eligibility packet, see which schools have the highest number of free and reduced eligible students, and those would be the best places to go because that's where you're going to impact the most of our priority population. Finding schools, also starting with established relationships. So if you're just coming into a Create Better Health program, talk to your supervisor and see if they are established in a school with any other areas of their programming, or if there was a school that previous Create Better Health ambassadors, formerly known as NEAs, have worked in. It might just be a good foot in the door if they're already familiar with our programming and all of the things we can offer to their students. You can talk to your local health department. I'll talk more about their role in this program in PSE in schools in just a moment, but you can reach out to the health department. We have their contact information available for you. And then another good resource is the Utah School Board of Education, the Child Nutrition Program. And we have a partnership with Amanda Nell at that organization who is overseeing Smarter Lunchrooms statewide. So she might be a good person to talk to if you're thinking about Smarter Lunchrooms and seeing if she has any pulse on schools or food service managers that may be particularly interested in your area. And once you identify the school, a really important part of Smarter Lunchrooms or School Garden or really any part of our programming is find a champion within the school, someone who's really interested and invested in helping kids establish these healthy habits at a young age. So it can be a teacher or a principal, a food service manager, a PE teacher, anyone who is a champion for healthy lifestyles for kids will really be a key for you to get your foot in the door and then also be able to find the other key stakeholders in the program that you're hoping to offer. So now onto the Smarter Lunchroom movement. This is a national strategy that was developed by Cornell University. It's in almost 30,000 schools as of now, all over the nation. And if you log on to their website, you can see they have a map, the movement interactive map, so you can find all of the different schools around the country that are doing Smarter Lunchrooms. And it's dedicated to providing schools with the knowledge, motivation, and resources needed to build lunchroom environments that make healthy food choices the easy choice. So we always have that tagline associated with PSE as make the healthy choice the easy choice. They use 3 different areas of expertise to design this movement. They look at economics, marketing, and psychology of the way people are making their food choices and all of the different influences on specifically children for this strategy, what drives their food choices. A great thing about Smarter Lunchrooms movement is it's free. Most of the strategies are free or low cost strategies, and they're all heavily evidence-based. So they've done a lot of different research at many of these schools to show that implementing some of these really simple low-cost strategies have improved the selection, but more importantly, the intake of healthy choices in schools. It reduces food waste at the schools, and it increases participation in the school meal program. And that's something we're interested in because we know that there are nutrition criteria associated with the school meals that are offered in schools, so whether it's breakfast or lunch. So a lot of the kids that we are hoping to help with our program, these might be very well maybe the A, only meals they receive during the day, or B, the most nutritious meals. So we want to encourage them to participate in these programs. We also know when they participate in these programs, it's money back into our economy. So there's lots of different levels of benefits of participating in such programs. So as I mentioned, the SLM, Smarter Lunchroom Movement, it's just really simple, what we call nudge or product placement strategies to encourage healthy choices. I think one of the most important takeaways and one of the things you really want to tell your partners as you're introducing the concept of Smarter Lunchrooms to them is that it doesn't limit any of the choices available. So all of the a la carte items, the cookies and the chips and sometimes things that are pretty big money makers for schools are still available in the cafeteria. They're just in a harder location to select. So kids, rather than having them right at the point of sale where they can just grab it themselves, maybe they'll have to ask the person at the checkout to grab them the a la carte cookie or something like that. And one of the things they found specifically with kids is when they are in the lunchroom and making their food decisions, they tend to be kind of lazy and they really just kind of go for the easiest and the default choices. So if those fruits and vegetables are easier to get, a lot of them would be more likely to choose that rather than just take that extra step to ask for that a la carte item. So I think that's just a really important thing to remember, that choices are not limited by this program. Some of the most effective and most low-cost strategies are placing fruit in an attractive basket at the point of sale. So just having a nice basket with fresh bananas and washed apples and oranges increases the selection of those items by something like, I don't know, 50 or 60%. I can't remember the exact number, but by a significant amount. When you go through the lunch line, kids will have the different milk options. They'll have, the unflavored milk, and then they'll have chocolate milk and whatever other ones. And they found that if at least 1/3 of the milks were unflavored, it significantly increased the selection of those. And remember, the chocolate milk is still there, but just making at least 1/3 of the, maybe there's 30 different milk containers out at a time, making sure at least 10 of those are unflavored will increase the likelihood of kids selecting the unflavored milk. Placing, that's what I mentioned, placing a la carte items in less convenient locations where kids maybe have to ask for them or take an extra step to grab them. Having tomorrow's menu posted on the way out the door, just saying what tomorrow's menu is going to be, so kids can say, oh, I like that, I'm going to be sure to get that one when I come in. It's another good strategy. Having a sample plated meal at the beginning of the line, so when they walk in and they have the line of the different item that changes every day, having a display of that meal, use your food, what would it be? Food display skills, I can't think of the word, but just to make that meal look appealing and put the whole reimbursable meal, so they'll have the grain products, the fruits, the vegetables, the milk, and all the other components of the reimbursable meal. And this is another good one that's a great place to get started, just fun names for menu items. So you could either hold a contest in your classrooms for fun names for healthy foods, maybe new healthy foods, and then make little signs for those in the cafeteria. One example that came to mind at a training that I went to, where they referred to bananas as monkey phones, and they made little signs of monkeys holding bananas as monkey phones, and you can imagine that increased the selection of those by a bit. So that could be either for single items, or it could be for the whole menu. Like you could do I don't know, a fun name for a taco that they're having that day, just to increase the appeal of it. One important thing to remember is as SNAP-Ed, as Create Better Health, we can help implement these changes, but we can't pay for materials or equipment with our fund. So even something like the basket at the point of sale, we can't use our funding for that kind of thing. And that's where partnerships, which I'll talk about in a minute, come into play. When you're trying to identify the strategies, like I said, this is a national movement, so there is no need to create anything new. This is ready to go, ready to roll out, and we have all of these materials available for you to order from our office if you don't already have them in your counties. There's the scorecard, which has 30 different strategies on it, and it just is a one-line sentence about the strategy. And then there's a handbook that corresponds with the scorecard that goes into more detail about implementing each of those strategies. So this is an image of the scorecard, so you can see some of the focus on fruit. A variety of mixed whole fruits is displayed in attractive bowls or baskets instead of stainless steel pans. Fruit is offered in at least 2 locations on service lines. Both hot and cold vegetables are offered. So just a variety, again, low-cost, simple strategies that you can implement in the cafeterias. You can order the scorecard and the handbook both from the state office if you don't already have them in your county. I think I already mentioned that. But one of the things you'll really want to do also is have schools select what they would like to work on first. We may go in with our own agenda and really want to push this basket because it sounds really easy and really effective, but maybe they're more interested in doing the menu names or just trying the milk strategy. The best thing you can do with any PSE work is meet them where they're at and kind of start with what they're interested in. It's just going to increase the sustainability of the project and the likelihood that they're going to want to continue to work with our program to make these healthy choices easier for their students to make. Smarter Lunchrooms found when schools select 1 to 3 strategies to start on, they're the most successful. So starting small, it seems sustainable. It's kind of setting those SMART goals. And then certainly not to say once they complete those goals, you can't continue to select 1 to 3 new strategies to work on. Another tool we have for you available at the state office is the magnet kit and magnet board. These are really effective strategies for some of the bigger changes they would make, not necessarily the more expensive changes. But some, they encourage like having the salad bar closer to the beginning of the cafeteria, or having 2 different lunch lines so kids don't have to wait in line for a long time to get that whole reimbursable hot meal. So these are some of the bigger ones that maybe after you've been working in the school, you may want to approach them about. And the idea of these magnet boards is to you would have a whiteboard, and then you could set up what their cafeteria currently looks like with these magnet strips. And then you can work with them to like move things around to show that, kind of give them a visual of how they could map out their cafeteria better. So it can be some of those bigger changes, but like also within here, you have like white milk. So you could just, replace some of their chocolate milks with white milk magnets, or fruit bowl. You could just place a fruit bowl. So you can use these for either bigger changes or some of the smaller changes. Another example is, sometimes cafeterias like to have the garbage cans right at the end of where the kids are eating for ease of cleanup, which makes sense, but it's not really an appealing place to eat right next to the garbage can. So, maybe moving the garbage cans to right before the exit where kids could throw things out would be something you can map out with this magnet kit. So this is another thing you can order from us. We handed them out to most counties, not this past annual conference, but the previous one. So you check in your county before ordering one, but if you do need them, we do have some available. So that's kind of an overview of the program, but within Utah, we run Smarter Lunchrooms as a partnership between us, Create Better Health, and the Utah Department of Health and the School Board of Education Child Nutrition Programs. So we ask that you reach out to your health department before contacting schools. And the reason we ask this is the health department has been working hard to do some district-wide trainings throughout the state to introduce Smarter Lunchrooms to whole districts of food service managers, so that when programs like ourselves or their educators go into an individual school, the food service manager already has a context to put into it. And I have a list of the schools and the districts that have had those trainings recently or within the last year. So that's one of the reasons we do it. We also do it because you can imagine schools and other places are probably pretty constantly requested to work with programs to do improvements like smarter lunchroom. So we don't want to bombard them with requests for the same thing. So we really want to be coordinated in our approach to increase the likelihood that people are going to feel positive about the program and be willing to work with us and or the health department. You can also reach out to the health department because they may know of interested schools already. They're in there doing their licensing. It's not an audit, it's I don't know, an audit. I'll just call it an audit. So they're in all of these schools making sure they're within the food safety regulations. So they may know of people who are interested. And you can also leverage resources. So some of the partnerships that have been successful with smarter lunchrooms between us and the health department, they're able to use their funding for things like the menu boards and the baskets. And sometimes they can even do like capital equipment purchases. So maybe they need a new freezer so they can have, maybe freezer's not, a new refrigerator so they can have more milk displayed or something like that. So it's a great way to leverage resources of the two programs. So within the last year, these districts have gotten trainings. The Morgan School District is trained and ready to go. Canyon School District will be trained within the next month or two. And then some schools in Washington County and Summit County. And I've also heard that there's been talk of a training in Weber County, but we'll be sure to update you as these are completed, so you know kind of where your schools and where your districts stand as far as their level of understanding of the program and introduction to the program. So once you've contacted your health department and identified your eligible schools and maybe have your champion, where do you go next? This is a big question that people have. And the nice thing about it is that there are different methods, and it really is based on what works well for you and your school, what works for your timing, your health department partners, and your school. So you could potentially partner with the Department of Health to do a district-wide training would be ideal, because maybe within 2 hours you've now reached 40 food service managers. So that would be an ideal thing to do. We've had some of our educators in Salt Lake County help with that, so that's a good opportunity. If something like that is not in the cards for your county, you can do a Smarter Lunchroom training for stakeholders of a single school or a small group of schools, if that's what works better. You would give them an overview of the program, and we do have a PowerPoint on our staff website that is available for you to provide to them. There's all of the slides, and then there's pretty detailed notes so that you would have some talking points for them. But if you had questions, I certainly would be happy to help you with them. Or you can work with an individual stakeholder in a school. So you can do an informal training if that's what seems the most comfortable to kind of just pique their interest about the program. So maybe you can bring the PowerPoint, or if that seems too formal, you could just, become familiar with it yourself and then talk to them about some of the things that you could potentially work together on. One thing I would recommend is just make sure the decision makers are at the table. So people who can say yay or nay, that's just to save you time. You may have to start with your champion and have an informal meeting, but before you go ahead and do the presentation, just make sure the people are there who can actually give you approval to do this. It is different for every school. We don't need any kind of approval from the state level, from the school board level. Schools are free to do whichever changes they're interested in. So that's kind of a nice freedom. So after you do any of your preliminary discussions or trainings, you'll begin the Smarter Lunchroom 4-step path, which I have all of their slides here. I'm going to move through them really quickly, but these are also available on the staff website for you to review. But this is kind of the process of like how to actually do Smarter Lunchrooms. And this is a good example of not reinventing the wheel. They have all of this great information available for us, free to use. So please use the resources that they have. So the first key is building those relationships. We've talked a bit about this and how our program would have to go about finding the eligible schools. And then the 4 steps are spot, plan, do, and prove. So spot the changes you want to make, and you will use the Smarter Lunchroom scorecard. I'll talk about that a little bit. And photos, we would like you to take photos during your baseline assessment of the cafeteria. Step 2 is make a plan. Do you need to purchase items, which again is something we're probably not going to be doing, but who needs to be trained, who needs to know about this, and who do you need to communicate with? Once you have your plan in place, so you know the things that you are going to partner with the school to implement, you will execute your plan. So do what you need to do to make those changes. And then the final step is prove, show your successes, and you'll use that Smarter Lunchroom scorecard again and more photos to show the successes that you've had in that particular school. So ways to spot the changes you want to make. So you'll use the scorecard. You'll go into that school and actually mark all of the things on the scorecard that they're doing. So like I said in the PSE 101 training, you always want to start with what people are already doing really well. Just makes them more open to talking about what improvements can be made, because in every cafeteria, there's going to be things they're already doing. So if you go in with that positive light of these are things you're doing great, what are some things you want to work on, you're just going to have a little bit more success. Taking photos, it's encouraged that you do the scorecard during a lunch period, during an active lunch period, so you can see how it all works and how the flow is, and just the whole process. One tip that in the training I went to that I thought was really interesting is they said, if you're doing this in an elementary school, make sure when you're looking at the lunch line and the salad bars, make sure you get down to the eye level of kids, of those students, because in some places they found the salad bar, like they put all these fun signs, but they put them way too high for the kids to actually see. Or the salad bar was just a little bit too high where kids couldn't see the actual vegetables and couldn't see the lovely display that they had made. So make sure you're getting it from the perspective of the kids you're trying to impact. Doing the scorecard, you can complete it yourself. It's great if you can complete it with a partner in the school, just so they can see the things that we're looking at. But any of those options are acceptable. And you'll do 1 school card per school before any changes are made. Plan it. So based on what you've learned, what do you want to do? And by you, we really mean the school. What does the school want to do based on what you've learned on that scorecard? So start small, start easy. Oh, okay, so they're suggesting 3 to 5 changes at a time, and I suggested 1 to 3. So just kind of assess the level of interest and in your school and determine how many goals you want to set with them. And then within those 1 to 3 strategies or 1 to 5 strategies, which ones will make the most difference? And the chances are if you start with that one and they see that that was a success and it made a big difference, that's like a tangible, visible difference, they may be more willing to continue to work with you. Plan it. The things to consider are communication, trainings, permission, funds. So when you're choosing those things to work on, consider all of these things. Who do you need to communicate with? Is it possible? What kind of training would you do? Is it feasible within your hours? You know, you have to set yourself up for success too, knowing that many of you are part-time employees that have a lot of other program areas going. So think about things that are reasonable for the school, but also for you to be successful with. What kind of permission will you need to do it? And that's going to differ based on individual school. And what kind of funds do you have? And funds are either to, you know, purchase tangible things, but also the amount of time you have to dedicate to it. Step 3 is do it, make the changes. Think about timing. Smaller changes can be made overnight or over the weekend. So like that fruit basket we talked about can be something you do just when the cafeteria is not in use, or putting the signs up can be made overnight. Larger changes are better made over the summer or after or over a vacation. So if you're going to do something like moving the salad bar location or just the layout of the tables within the cafeteria, that's something you probably want to do when you have more time to do it. And then the final step is prove it. So you'll complete that Smarter Lunchroom scorecard again and take after photos. And the Smarter Lunchroom scorecard is an environmental scan tool that we've talked about that is a way to show improvements made to the food environment. People get caught up on the word scorecard and they think that their score is like a grade and it's going to be used to compare to other schools, and that's certainly not the intent of it. It's just quantitative way to capture changes to the food environment that are made as a result of our program or the smarter lunchrooms. So yeah, I just said this, you use the same scorecard when you start working with them and when you finish working with them, or at the end of the fiscal year, taking pictures to support those changes, and then success stories, also reporting success stories in pairs. So these are the available resources for Smarter Lunchroom. It's all under the staff website, the PSE tab. There's a Smarter Lunchroom movement, and you click on that, and all of these plus some additional items are available. There's a document, the Utah Smarter Lunchroom Initiative, which is how to plan and manage your work with individual schools. So none of these are, set in stone. You absolutely have to do this step-by-step process. It's just a way to give you some ideas on how to approach a school, and also to make our implementation of this program consistent across the state. So using it as a guideline of how you want to work with schools, I think will be really beneficial and take some of the thought process out of it for you. There's the health department contact sheet, so who to contact within your health department region. It just was updated this morning, so it's the most recent list. There's the Smarter Lunchroom PowerPoint presentation that I talked about earlier to introduce the program to schools, with the detailed notes section for you to have as your talking points. There are some examples of creative, fun, and descriptive names, so like those monkey phones, some other ideas for you. But I would encourage you also to have your students, if you're working in the classrooms, also to come up with these names, maybe have a contest. And then quick and inexpensive lunchroom makeover ideas. So these are, in support of the ones on the scorecard, but some additional ideas as well from Cornell. So Smarter Lunchroom contact info, we're switching gears here, and LaCee Jimenez will be the contact for PSE work in our office, but I'm also happy to help. Amanda Nill is at the school board. She oversees Smarter Lunchroom throughout the state. And then the health department folks are Sarah Roundy, who is based out of Salt Lake, but she is similar to me, where she oversees a lot of the educators, the health department educators throughout the state. So she's kind of your main contact there. But again, that individual county or region sheet is available on the staff website. So that's it for Smarter Lunchroom. Another approved PSE strategy in our schools are working with school gardens. So the goal of gardens is obviously to improve the availability of produce, fresh produce in the school. That's the PSE goal of it. We don't have a structured school garden intervention. There's not like a toolkit or anything like that. But the things that you could do is, if you're counting your PSE time as a school garden, you would be working on garden establishment, possibly assisting in the planting and maintenance of the garden and the produce harvest. So those would be kind of the PSE activities associated with the garden. Direct education supporting the garden would be like teaching kids about the produce, doing recipe samples with the produce. So that's a great example of a multi-level intervention where you're helping cultivate the garden for PSE and then teaching kids how to use it for direct education. In some cases, SNAP-Ed funds may be available for seeds, plants, and garden tools. This is something you do have to get approved through our state office. And in a lot of instances, schools, there's a lot of like grant opportunities for schools to get funding for these types of things. So in most instances, no one has needed funds to do this, but sometimes it's nice to kind of go to the table with what you could offer to partner with the different options. So that is a possibility. School garden evaluation. So you would be reporting the amount of food harvested and used from the garden. Again, that's just showing like a change to the food environment. There were 125 pounds of cherry tomatoes harvested over the course of the year, and those were items that healthy food was more available to students because of this work that you've done. If you need a scale for this type of evaluation, contact us. We can work with you to make that purchase. And then you'll also report how the produce was used. Was it used in the cafeteria for some of the meals, or did you just do did you do recipe samples in the classroom as part of your Create My Plate lessons or food, fun, and reading lessons? So just reporting how that was used. So create healthy schools, pairs reporting. This is another hot topic. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because there's a lot of detail in the protocol manual. But kind of overview of one PSE entry per school. So if you're doing smarter lunchrooms and school gardens, it would still be one entry for that school. The detailed instructions you can find are in the protocol manual, section 8. There's one for create healthy schools, one for create healthy pantries, and one for create healthy stores. There's step-by-step instructions, and you will, since you're just doing one entry for each site that you're working on, or each school in this instance, you'll update that throughout the year. So a lot of the changes adopted, or the interventions, or the stages of implementation, all the variety of things that these entries ask you for, you'll just keep updating it. So you just keep adding to it. You're just kind of building to show your progression of work at that location. You won't mark it as complete until the end of the work. So if you are working with them for multiple years, you would mark it as complete at the end of the fiscal year or the end of the school year, and then you would start a new one at the new school year. Or if you work with them for 6 months and say, you know, we've completed everything we've wanted to do and there's no further work here, or perhaps you've started with them and you feel like it's just kind of plateaued and it's not a beneficial partnership, then you would mark it as complete at that point. So you can see here, there's not a one size fits all for these pairs entries. So what I did to help you through it is just gave you ways to think about how to answer all of these questions. So you'll see here intervention topics. I can't tell you which intervention topics to choose because I don't know which part of Smarter Lunchroom or which part of school garden work you're going to be doing. So it says this will depend on the strategies you're doing. And then down below, I said, you know, chances are if you're doing Smarter Lunchroom, you may choose things like fruits and vegetables if that's one of the strategies you're working on to promote those, or fiber-rich foods, again, for fruits and vegetables, or whole grain product promotion. Dairy if you're doing the milk strategy. So just ways to kind of think about each of these sections for your PSE entry. One thing I wanted to point out is this needs, readiness, and effectiveness section. So it asks if you conducted any needs or readiness assessments at the site or organization. And this is referring to those environmental scan tools that we have for all of our PSE interventions. So in this case, for Smarter Lunchrooms, it would be the scorecard. So you would select yes, and then you would select the survey instrument as the Smarter Lunchrooms self-assessment scorecard from the drop-down menu. This is where you're going to report the baseline score and the follow-up score, and hopefully you would see, you know, at least a 1-point change between those two scores. So you just put a brief description of your scores and things you're going to work on, and then you would, before you marked it complete at the end of the year, do that follow-up score. Another important section that I think a lot of people get hung up on is this strategy, and it's talking about complementary activities. So it's talking about those multi-level interventions. So obviously we know you're doing a PSE intervention at this site because you're filling out a PSE form. But the strategy section is where you're going to select if you're also doing direct education. So if you're working in the classrooms, you would select evidence-based education. And you can see here examples of when to select it that I put in here. If you're doing parent or community involvement, so maybe you did a back to school night and got parents like in the know about what you're doing, you would select that. Or maybe parents are helping with the school garden as well, so you would select that. Changes adopted, this is another one that's different for everybody. So the way I did this one is the scorecard section. They have focus on fruit, berry, vegetables, highlight the salad. So I selected possible changes you would be selecting based on the section of the scorecard that you may have selected. So hopefully that just gives you a way to kind of think about how to answer each of these sections, because it can be a little overwhelming and daunting. But again, you can find all of the details in the protocol manual, so I encourage you to check that out. And that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions or comments? And these trainings will all be available on the website. I'll send them out as they are posted, send links. So you use it as a refresher, or if you're a supervisor and have educators come on, please encourage them to watch these trainings as part of their new hire onboarding.
Casey, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry. I have a question about So if you were to implement smarter lunchrooms or the school gardens, and let's say you wanted to go into the classrooms to talk about a new produce that they've never grown before, like a different type of apple or something. And so you enter the classrooms and you let them sample it and you teach them a lesson, maybe a fruit and vegetables lesson or something. Would we report that as a separate direct activity? And then what would we say the curriculum would be if we were focusing on something that's maybe not directly related to the curriculum while we're teaching?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I would probably, yes, if you are doing direct education that complements your PSE, you would do 2 different entries. You would do direct education and a PSE entry. What I probably would do, it's a little tricky. So if you're just going in because you have a bunch of apples, it'd probably be more of an indirect activity unless you're doing a whole series of them. So if you were doing just a one-time in the classroom with youth to teach them about this produce that's available, I would call that an indirect activity. So I would do an indirect activity entry and the PSE activity. If you were using one of the curriculum and then just pulling in that produce that's available, so something like food, fun, and reading, or create my plate and just, choosing recipes that feature the produce that's available from the garden, then you would go ahead and do the whole series program activity. Options outside of that, I would say reach out to us and we can work with you, because we really, if you're doing series in the classrooms, we really want you to stick to create my plate or food, fun, and reading for your direct education. So if you have a need beyond that, reach out to us and we can figure out how we can help you and then how to report it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. If you have questions, reach out to LaCee or myself, and we'd be happy to help get this started. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Casey.